Val Kilmer's abrupt disappearance from Hollywood remains one of the most striking shifts in modern film history. Once a dominant presence on screen, Kilmer's career seemingly vanished overnight. According to recent revelations, particularly from actor Mel Gibson, Kilmer's decline may have stemmed not from behavior alone, but from refusing to conform to the industry's unwritten rules, a defiance that some suggest led to an informal blacklisting. In the 1980s and early 1990s, Kilmer was considered a powerhouse. Trained at Juilliard and recognized as one of the youngest actors ever admitted, he rapidly climbed the Hollywood ranks. His performances in Top Secret, Top Gun, The Doors, and Tombstone earned critical acclaim. By the time he portrayed Batman in Batman Forever, 1995, Kilmer had reached peak stardom. However, when the sequel Batman and Robin was released, Kilmer was unexpectedly replaced by George Clooney with no formal explanation provided. In an interview with The Independent, director Joel Schumacher heavily criticized Kilmer, calling him difficult, psychotic, and unprofessional. Schumacher expressed his frustration openly, recounting that Kilmer did not speak to him for 2 weeks during filming, an experience Schumacher ironically described as bliss. Despite Schumacher's public comments, many have questioned whether difficult behavior alone could explain Kilmer's exclusion from mainstream Hollywood. Historically, challenging personalities have often thrived in the industry. This discrepancy has led to speculation that Kilmer's absence had less to do with temperament and more to do with internal politics, and his refusal to comply with certain expectations. In a candid interview, Kilmer admitted to being kind of blacklisted, stating that he had not secured a studio job in over 15 years. He acknowledged having ideas and insecurities, which may have contributed to his friction with the industry. However, he emphasized that his outspoken nature and insistence on treating acting as art rather than business likely worked against him. Kilmer described the industry's expectations of silence and compliance. He reflected on his earlier career with regret, wishing he had shown more gratitude for the opportunities he was given. He also admitted that he had mistakenly believed the film industry prioritized artistic integrity when, in reality, it operated as a business first. His departure from major roles occurred around 1998 to 1999, a period during which other prominent actors, including Mel Gibson, Wesley Snipes, and Brendan Fraser, also faced career downturns. In Gibson's case, he later claimed to have had weird, paranoid suspicions about what was happening behind the scenes in Hollywood. He likened the atmosphere to a Western saloon, where strangers are met with silence and veiled warnings. Gibson eventually concluded that his suspicions were justified. After directing The Passion of the Christ, he was allegedly shunned by major studios and forced to self-finance his projects. Around this same period, Stanley Kubrick released Eyes Wide Shut, a film depicting secret societies and elite gatherings, widely interpreted as a metaphor for Hollywood's hidden side. Kubrick died shortly before finalizing the cut, and approximately 25 minutes of footage were allegedly removed posthumously. Kilmer's removal from the Hollywood spotlight occurred the same year. His portrayal of Batman, cold, emotionally distant, and hollow, has since been interpreted by some as symbolic, potentially reflecting the experience of those who operate within the industry's concealed systems. Kilmer was known to document much of his life, including private and behind-the-scenes moments, perhaps anticipating the need to preserve his version of events. His 2021 documentary, Val, offered a haunting glimpse into this archive. Moreover, the timing of Kilmer's career decline overlaps with rising public scrutiny surrounding Jeffrey Epstein and his network. Some have speculated whether Kilmer's disappearance was linked to a refusal to participate in circles that later became infamous, though no concrete evidence has emerged. In a related context, the film Sound of Freedom, based on the real-life work of Homeland Security agent Tim Ballard and focused on child trafficking, faced significant release delays. The script was completed in 2015 and production wrapped in 2018. Initially slated for release by 20th Century Fox, the film's fate changed when Disney acquired Fox in 2019. After the acquisition, Sound of Freedom was shelved without explanation, prompting public suspicion. Observers questioned why a film centered on child rescue was suppressed, especially by a corporation often seen as a family-oriented brand. The convergence of these timelines, Kilmer's withdrawal, Kubrick's death, Gibson's industry exile, and the delay of sensitive films has fueled ongoing theories about systemic silencing within Hollywood. These cases have led to broader speculation about whether some celebrities have faced professional and personal ruin for refusing to conform or for speaking out about uncomfortable truths. But after that, Mel Gibson intervened and made the situation much more chaotic. Mel has been Hollywood's black sheep for as long as anybody can remember, and this man has been pointing out the negative spirit that exists inside the industry since the late 90s. When he was younger, he was still trying to determine whether he was a paranoid individual or whether Hollywood was, in fact, giving off the vibe of a haunted house. On the other hand, the longer he remained, the more certain he became that whether or not they are truly concealing something, it is not paranoia. He once compared Hollywood to a warped version of a small village, where everyone is aware of the truth, but no one has the courage to speak about it. A powerful producer allegedly informed him, "There is a producer I know, a successful producer. I will not mention names, but his whole, opinion about women on film, from beginning to end, is very brief." This was one of the moments that went down in history and left a lasting impression on people. "There are women on film who are either naked or dead," he explains. "They are both superior. Moreover, it's like, Mel was quick to point out that Hollywood was spiritually bankrupt from the beginning, and as time went on, he did not keep quiet about his observations. The manner in which they disrespect women, exploit children, and shield predators was brought to their attention by him. As a result, Mel's support for Sound of Freedom felt more personal when it was finally released independently and began to make ripples in the music industry. And what do you think? The movie had a budget of $14 million, yet it made nearly $100 million all over the world. But what about the standard media? Absence of sound. Not only were they not silent, but they were also antagonistic. Actually, that cannot be said. The phrase conspiracy bait was used by CNN, Rolling Stone, and The Guardian, among other sites. Only vibes and shade, no in-depth assessment, and no facts are provided. Mel has continued to make efforts to advance his career, despite the fact that he has been largely excluded from popular productions. In his promotion of Lethal Weapon 5, he has been claiming that the writing for the film is actually the greatest of the entire franchise. He claims that it is written, that it is ready, but that it ultimately will not be made, because even he is unable to explain why. To tell you the truth, however, it is probably not so much about the quality of the script as it is about how hazardous studios believe his name was and still is. The fact is, he is not completely wrong to feel frustrated, because there are people in Hollywood who have done wild things and were welcomed back with open arms. He is not completely wrong to feel frustrated. This begs the question, why not him? He has been asking himself that question for a number of years now. It is interesting to note that there are a few individuals working in the sector who have made every effort to support Mel. In a well-known endorsement, Robert Downey Jr., often known as Mr. Comeback King, endorsed him. Also, Andrew Garfield has shown his support for him in recent times. When Garfield was marketing the film Hacksaw Ridge, which Mel directed, he made it a point to emphasize, everyone deserves second, third, and even fourth chances. However, that is not going to take place anytime soon. At this point, Mel is dropping hints that Val was aware that the price of fame in Hollywood was not simply difficult labor. It was your soul. Is that Kilmer? Those spiritual leases were not something he was about to sign. In essence, Mel made the implication that Val had seen too much, asked the incorrect questions, and declined the invitation to shake hands with the elite. Suddenly he was no longer available for jobs, projects were no longer available, and the media began to portray him in a negative light. The fact that I was sick or taking a step back was not the only factor. Mel claims that Val was kicked out of the game because he refused to play by the rules that were not explicit. According to the allegations, the murky system that Mel has been criticizing for years turned its back on Kilmer because he did not comply with the requirements. And at this point, people are beginning to wonder whether the blacklisting was more about publicity than it was about ego. When Val finally made his return to the role of Iceman in Maverick, it was just like a miracle, just like a comeback. On the other hand, if you view that moment again right now, it does not feel like a return. Rather, it feels like a farewell. Do you remember hearing the voice in the movie? It is not actually his. It was a combination of artificial intelligence, recorded audio, and smoke and mirrors. They were able to make the scenario work because he wanted to do it so badly. But behind the camera, he was having a difficult time. Every day of filming was a challenge. Every line was a skirmish. It's important to note that after watching that movie, Val became quite silent. Kinda quiet, if you will. His appearances and interviews came to an end. He stopped answering questions. His followers believed that he was simply taking it easy and enjoyed his life in solitude. On the other hand, we were unaware of the fact that he was actually vanishing as time went on. In addition, his friends began to take notice of it. He did not answer calls, and he did not respond to SMS that were sent to him. A few people hadn't seen him in 6 months. Family members were not even aware of what was going on. Despite this, nobody actually exerted any stress. Given that, after all, he was Val Kilmer. It is a mystery. The artist who is spiritual. The man who made living alone a way of life with his lifestyle. To the day he passed away on April 1st. It was not an April Fool's joke, despite the fact that many people probably wished it were. Following the publication of the autopsy report, everything underwent a transformation. Furthermore, despite the fact that he was battling throat cancer, the official cause of death was pneumonia. In contrast, pneumonia is the most common cause of death in the entertainment industry. It's the same story with Kim Porter and Andre Harrell, a disease that is convenient and quiets those who are boisterous. We have lost Kim. He is no longer alive. Andre Harrell has passed away. Puffy and Al are the only 2 people still alive, and they came dangerously close to passing away. Heavy D was discovered lying on his back, having suffered a heart attack. It was a heart attack for Andre Harrell. Kim passed away due to pneumonia. The first report from the coroner, however, stated that she had passed away. The cause of death was determined to be a homicide. Furthermore, they discovered poisons in her body, which served as evidence that she had been poisoned. In case you were unaware, they possess chemicals that cause symptoms similar to those of pneumonia and heart attacks. Kilmer suffered from persistent infections, surgical scars that had not healed, and severe malnutrition. He also had persistent infections. A number of factors, including starvation, muscle wasting, untreated infections, and healing wounds from previous surgeries that never healed, were mentioned in the report of the coroner, which may have been a clue of neglect or intentional withdrawal. It was the kind of physical condition that one would anticipate seeing in someone who had been gradually dying for a considerable amount of time. There were even some infections that could have been treated, but they were not. This was something that the coroner mentioned. As a result of Val's lack of communication, he did not request assistance. He had severe pain, but he was trying to keep it all to himself. Next, there were the medications to take. The study discovered high amounts of prescription medicines. These levels were not sufficient to cause an overdose, but they were sufficient to determine that the individual in question was experiencing persistent agony, not only for the physical, but most likely also for the emotional. You stop attempting to communicate the kind of suffering you are experiencing to other people since no one truly understands it. The past few years had been spent by him painting, keeping a journal, and remaining close to his children. But he had also been distancing himself. Let us not overlook the tribute to Batman that he put on his Facebook page just a few days before he passed away. I have an animal for us. It's been quite some time. You are very stunning. Ultimately, Val Kilmer was more than just a celebrity in the movies. He was a man who dared to say no in a field that was built on silence, and he was a whistleblower in a cape. And if he was banned for that, it raises the question of who else remained silent in order to survive. Perhaps Kilmer's lack of response was not an indication of weakness. It's possible that their strategy was protection. Perhaps the true narrative is not about how he passed away, but rather about why he vanished. If you were shaken by it, know that you are not alone. However, you are going to want to see the video that we offer next.